So I'll start my comments with a humorous thing that happened to me recently. I was at an event, and a young woman had on a tank top, and on the back of her back was a tattoo of our water tower, along with the Mormon temple. And I thought that was quite the interesting thing. But she was
for the ball packing.
Yeah. So I just thought that was how interesting this can be in terms of people's like gut level instincts about what this is. And as Director Fredrickson and Director Richards know, I've had that kind of visceral reaction. Right? Like I've been against moving this water tower from the very first moment it was discussed. It was like it's like the worst thing to me, and I don't know why. It was in my gut a lot, right? That I just didn't want to see that piece of my community, of my growing up, leave. So one of the first things I asked, and I'd like to re-ask and just get this on the record, is it's pretty clear to me as I travel across the country, not all cities have water towers. So we find ourselves in this mess, why aren't we considering an electronic version without a lifted tower still?
There we go. Okay, I'll answer that. A number of years ago, while I was water superintendent, we had all of our reliance in a computerized system that operates the whole water system. And it failed on us. And when it failed, it caused a third of the city to depressurize. And we had to issue a boil order for a third of the city. The only thing that kept this city from having a full city boil order was the fact that that elevated tower helped maintain pressure in a large portion of the system until generators were able to turn on and resupply water pressure to the city. There is a gap, there is a lag in there, that when power goes out or something along that line, we've had a few citywide power outages. There is a lag before generators will start up and generate clean power to fire up the wells again. And in that lag, if not for pressurized water that we've got with the elevated tower, we would fall below the reporting limits and have to issue a citywide boil advisory. That being said, other cities take a gamble, I believe. They put their faith in mechanical means by not having an elevated tower. And it's just a matter of time, perhaps, before they have an issue. Now, I will say a lot of cities have what are called pressure zones, multiple areas of the city that are operated off of different pressures. So if they have a citywide power outage, they may only have an issue in one pressure zone they have to issue. The city of Idaho Falls is one giant pressure zone. So the elevated tower does have an impact for the entire city.
Yeah, I would just say, what's the cost estimate for a pressurized one as opposed, would we save money or lose money with an electronic version with generation?
So I think one of the issues you have too, that I'll just add to, is we're blessed and cursed with the fact that we're incredibly flat. Right. So a lot of communities, you're not going to see an aerial tower, but you are going to see towers on high points that generate some of the same type of things. But the issue that we struggle with somewhat is all of those, those automatic transfer switches that would actually take place to bring emergency generation online, they still take time. And that's some of the things that we've been concerned about to move to that particular type of a system. When the community recognizes the benefit that it's had from elevated water for the last 87 years.
But cost, is it different?
Over the life cycle, initially it is cheaper. I will say that than building and constructing a tower. Over the life cycle, though, if you were to get rid of the tower, we still have to have storage for that well, for our chlorine contact time. We would have to find a spot large enough to have a ground level storage tank, which would occupy far more space on the ground. Now you're pumping from the well to that tank instead of the elevated tower. So now to supply pressure from that tank, you have to add a booster pumping station which includes multiple booster pumps and generated power for those to be able to pressurize into the system, whereas the elevated tower does that for you. That being said, on a life cycle, if you look at 80, 100-year life cycle, the costs are very comparable.
Okay, so that moves me to the next thing. I happen to be reading a book by an indigenous person in Australia, and the book is What We Can Learn from Ancient Wisdom. And one of the things that has been interesting to me in reading that book is when you make 100-year decisions, like what should we be thinking about? And what are those things? And what is it that we truly value as a community? And one of the things that we just saw in the comprehensive plan is that 60% of people think they need more park space right by them, as close to them as they can get it. Not even talking about the gem that we have that makes our city have a character, that we're unique, that's in our name, Idaho Falls. To have the Greenbelt be there and the Riverwalk, it defines who we are. And I drove by it on Sunday, there was 1,000 people on the Riverwalk walking on these pathways. And that didn't happen with thinking about where, well, we've committed $120,000, we better not lose that. But in 2090, when someone looks at the parkland and says, why in the heck do we have this concrete monstrosity and the only width that's available on the Greenbelt? Is there anywhere else that has any width to have a meeting on our Greenbelt that I mean, does anywhere else come to mind, PJ? I can't, I have a vision. I would love to have Civitan Park connect to the Greenbelt. Then we have this amazing space. But right now, we have a thin Riverwalk. This is the only depth I know that we have in the whole system. Am I wrong?
Memorial Drive down near the roundabout has a little bit of depth, and Heritage Park will have some significant depth.
Right, but way south and not necessarily part of our core, right, of the city.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when I changed my mind, Councilor Deeman. And this will change how we do work here. I think Jim and I have committed to this. Jim, Councilor Freeman. I'm not making another damn decision until I sit it and look where this is from a street view on Google Maps. Because I think I know where something's going. But if you go back to those pictures with those renderings, I have no concept with the trees there and where it sits. But when I went and saw that site, when there was snow on the ground and someone circled where it was, in my gut, I knew we were making a mistake. That there was no way I'd want to lose that open space in parkland. And if I had seen that, if I had went like Councilor Freeman said and visited this site instead of looking at that picture, because in my mind, when I saw that location was on the Greenbelt, I thought it was further down by Pancurry Bridge with the trees, and I thought it was in my head somehow I had it around where the sewer goes across the river, which now I know is way too thin. There's no way it could go there. So it's a lesson to me, but I'll tell you, when you come to us with future presentations from any department, give me a Google Street View and let me see what I'm looking at, because I've made this decision poorly based on not knowing where I was. And I think a lot of the city made this decision this way in terms of we had a big argument about taking down the water tower. That's what, when you look at the social media things you put up there, if you go back to those, I don't see a thing on there about tearing down the park on Greenbelt. I mean, you take that space for this tower, and the one place you can gather on our Greenbelt is gone forever. And we're making that decision because we don't want to go back and revisit the conversation, and we don't want to spend $120,000. That to me is just not. It's not looking forward for 2 generations or 100 years. And our identity is tied up in this decision, I think. It's our city's identity. And if we don't take time and at least reconsider this and see if there isn't an answer to what Councilor Francis said, is there isn't an alternative, I think we've done ourselves a disservice. And I'm in complete agreement about the Land and Water Conservation Grant. How much effort was it to get $300,000 or $400,000 to build a water park, and Ammon built one 15 years, 10 years, I don't know, because they had a land and water grant, right? We could build a whole system of water parks with the millions of dollars we've lost by being out of compliance. And we have one of the best functioning parks and rec departments, I think, in the state. We have a beautiful city because of the work you guys do, and you're doing it with two hands tied behind your back when you can't get access to $900 million that Congressman Simpson finally got fully funded in perpetuity. I mean, it's not just like it's funded this year. For national parks and local parks, that's granted in perpetuity in all future budgets. That's an amazing accomplishment. And we don't even get to apply. To dig ourselves deeper into that makes no sense to me. Especially when what you said, doing it knowingly as opposed to having it be a mistake of the school district or, you know, something that happened kind of secondarily. So I apologize that I'm impassioned about this, but this goes to the heart of what I believe about the city. It's that we value our public spaces. And we've all worked really hard to make those places sacred and important to us. And being outside and being in these places matters. It makes us who we are, and that's why I feel so strongly. And I have, like, your comment, Michelle, is so spot on. I did have buyer's remorse. I did it when I had it around the roundabout in Boulevard when I saw those 100-year-old trees get torn down for that roundabout too. I love that roundabout though, today.
That's awesome.
I do, but I hated seeing those trees come down. They were a part of I remember sitting in the waiting pool at that pool on that corner. So that's my impassioned kind of thoughts and plea and why we want at least to reconsider this. I think the two members of the that represent the Public Works liaison system, we've been pretty open about this. I will also say I would hesitate to listen to anyone who criticizes Director Frederickson or Director Richards. They absolutely try to do their best for public outreach, and I have no qualms with that concept. I mean, I think they wanted to do what was right here. There was all kinds of problems that probably contributed to the lack of data, and I don't think that was the fault of people who were trying to do their jobs. So that's my comments.